Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to Speak Pact. Thrilled you're here with us today. We're going to fly high with Mark Noon. Lots of great things to dive into with you, Mark. You've been speaking for 12 years, prolifically. But before that, you were in the Air Force.
I was.
Serving our country for 20 years. That's fabulous. Thank you for that. That's a long commitment. And you've been in leadership. You have been in employee engagement and customer experience. These are some of the areas that you really shine in. I know you've got a book out there, which we'll be talking about, Set Up Timeless Leadership Skills for Success. So let's just dive in. What took you? I'm sure you were probably a pretty young man when you went into the Air Force. And then when you finally emerged, what's the process from that kind of lifestyle to the stage?
Yeah, it really started with my time in the Air Force. And in fact, even when you and I were talking before we started recording, I didn't even think of this till just now. My first opportunity to speak, I was a young enlisted guy. So if you're familiar with the military, there's an enlisted and officer side. I served in both areas. I came in as an enlisted guy, a young guy in my early 20s. I finished my education. I was able to be commissioned as an officer. Somewhere in the between that, I had this opportunity to try out for a speech. So this is my first speaking opportunity, really. I had to literally go before a board of people. I had to present myself in what I would say in this particular message. And I can remember that day so clearly when I got selected, and then I prepared for this message. And it's one of those where you prepare so much for this 10-minute thing, right? I think, in fact, for those that have done TED Talks and things like that, I think you spend more time preparing for a lesser amount of speaking than you do for a greater. I could speak for an hour probably off the cuff, right? Mm-hmm. But a 10-minute something, I've got to spend time preparing. I remember that day so particularly because after I got done, I got a note from the highest ranking military commander on that base because he was at the event. I didn't know he was there. And it was this handwritten note that actually has been the cornerstone of a lot of the leadership things I've talked about over the years. A handwritten note from that man in the year 2000 talking about what a fabulous job I did on this speech. And really that launched this opportunity within the military to be able to be on stage. I hosted a lot of events. I was the MC for a lot of events. I started doing traveling and speaking about patient experience because I worked in the healthcare world, customer experience, and leadership. So that was really how it started. Was I tried out for a speech that to me was just an opportunity. It wasn't anything big, and it ended up really being the sort of the catapult to the last now 24 years.
And I assume you spoke on something you knew. It was a topic that you were pretty familiar with. It
was leadership, right? And it wasn't necessarily that I was some expert at that point. I'm just this young guy. I think at that time I was maybe in my early 30s, and it was not like I was an expert. I was just giving my viewpoint on leadership from the position that I held, the rank that I held in the military. Nice. That was all it was. And the audience was anywhere people younger than me to, like I said, the highest ranking person on the base.
Now, I love the point that you brought up that giving those short talks is much harder than giving a longer talk, hence TEDx, right? Why is it such? But there is a quote. I need to figure out who wrote it because it's the founding somebody. But if I had more time, I would write a shorter letter. Yes. It takes way more thought, cut out the fluff, right? Cut out the unnecessary and just get to that core. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good lesson. I think that's really what makes a great talk. If you can make the greatest impact in the fewest amount of words, I think it hits way more powerfully.
Right. I think a lot of speakers tend to want to just be verbose and want to talk and talk and talk, and they end up rambling a lot of times rather than just getting from point to point to point and making a 45-minute message a whole lot more impactful than an hour and a half time. So
yes.
yeah,
Okay, so you
good
get
point.
out of the Air Force
Yeah.
and you found this love for speaking, or at
Right.
least this skill, right,
Yeah.
for speaking. What were your first steps? How did you get those first few civilian stages?
Yeah, it was one, I started to work for a company that was a coaching and consulting practice, right? And so I sort of joined this company, and they enabled me the opportunity to sort of have a platform. It was, I would go to these organizations and I would do coaching, and then periodically throughout the year they would do leader development events, and so I would become a part of that event. And so I would prepare 3 hours worth of material to talk about communication, to talk about leadership, to talk about patient to customer experience, those kind of things. And it was really that platform. It was partnering with an organization that sort of already had a network of clients, which sounds like wow, what a great way to go and an easy way to go, and it was. But at the same time, you've got to really have the material. You've got to spend a lot of time preparing. I would go to the same, when I was coaching places and then doing those leader development, it wasn't like I'm traveling all throughout the year at different places speaking on the same topic. I had to have new topics. Every 3 to 4 months, I'm coming up with a whole new set of material. So that really, over those several years that I worked there, was this launching, this foundation, I guess you would say, of material that now I'm still drawing from a lot of that. Only I'm putting it in context of different industries and different audiences, right?
Yeah. Okay. That reminds me of a story I like to share. So I learned how to drive on a 3 on a tree, if you know what that is.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Big old international truck.
Right.
It was a 3 on a tree. That made automatics like a breeze.
Oh, right.
So I went from the 3 on the tree to the clutch thing and then an automatic was like nothing. And I think you basically immersed yourself in that way, having to come up with new content constantly like that. The rest of your career,
right,
was simple in comparison, I'm sure. I mean, it's always new level, new challenges, new level, new challenges. So,
sure.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious because of the role you played as in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. But was leadership always a passion of yours? Did you speak from a place of passion, or, hey, I know this stuff. This is a contribution I can make?
Yeah. It goes back to, well, it became a passion, but it came out of necessity. And so, we're going to talk about my book in a little bit, but when I first became a leader in the military, and we think of military people as maybe great leaders, and there are a lot of them, but people are people in the military just like they are outside the military. Leader development is something we do a lot of in the military, but it's not always practical. It's very conceptual. So you'll be sent to a school for a number of weeks and you'll learn all these ideas. And then you go back to the job and there isn't the application part. So I tell people all the time, so I'm an enlisted guy for my first 8.5 years. And then I got my commission as an officer. So that's a very different world. It's a different leadership world. And there's lots of leaders in the enlisted side, but once you become an officer, you're automatically in a position of leadership. And I tell people this, on Friday in July, I can remember the date, July 31st, year 2000. It's a Friday. It's July 30th, year 2000. It's a Friday. I am an enlisted member of the Air Force. I get my commissioning ceremony. It's a big deal in the Air Force to have a ceremony. They pin on the new rank. That's on a Friday. Literally, it's a 3-day weekend. Tuesday, I show up at my next place. I'm an officer and I'm in charge of people and I'm a leader. And I tell people all the time, what was my preparation to be a leader? 3 days to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. It was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and all of a sudden I'm in the position. And so when I was thrown into this, and I had to, I started reading every John Maxwell book I could. I started reading every leadership book I could find. And really that built my leadership skills and my understanding to a greater degree. But when you're thrown into it, you swim and you figure it out. And so when I wrote the book, it's all about that idea of how do we set people up for success as leaders.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about quality over quantity, because I know pre-lockdown, you were doing 60 or so engagements a year. That's a lot of engagements.
It is.
And then since then, maybe in the 20 range, you'd like to be more in the 40 range, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how that shift has really affected you as a speaker. Are you now doing fewer speakers for a higher rate, fewer speaking engagements for a higher rate? Just take me through your journey from right before the lockdown to today.
Yeah. Certainly 2020 changed everything in all aspects, certainly for speaking. I did a lot of those virtual things for a while, excuse me. But it really, I have a business called Leadership 10. That's the organization that I founded with two other business partners. And we do a lot of coaching. We do a lot of consulting in a lot of different areas, a lot of different industries. I'm primarily the spokesperson, I guess you'd say. So I'm on the stage a lot of places, sort of talking about what we do in coaching. But I have spent a little bit more time in that realm of the business and less time speaking. And that's sort of how I've filled that time. But it also gives me the fodder that I need, the new fodder, the continued fodder for that leadership message that I have, right? So when I think about, okay, I've spent a lot of time in healthcare in my military career and immediately after when I was working for another consulting organization. So now I'm in all these industries. We coach, literally every possible industry, from government to industrial to, finance, law offices, doctor offices, all of those things. It's given me this opportunity to create new perspectives, new ways of presenting this I say the same material. It's not necessarily the same, but the similar material, but in a way that's understood. I have a group that I work with literally every month. I'm on the road with this group, and they're a very blue collar, industrial. There's foremen, they're union representatives. These are guys who have been working in the business for 15 years. And I'm coaching them and I'm doing workshops with them and I'm speaking to them. And it's a world of difference than speaking. A couple months ago, I was at a government finance association meeting, 800 people in the audience. They're all finance people. Very different audience from some union guys who are working, tractors and trailers and cranes and all that kind of stuff. Very different environment, but it's leadership, right? And how do you lead somebody in that environment versus the office environment? So it's really given me that new material to say, here's how this works practically versus conceptually that we talk about leadership so much.
I'd like to dive into that a little bit. So you've got your speaking, and then you also have a coaching and consulting back end, I would say, or maybe foundational piece to what you offer with Leadership 10. Let's talk about the utilization of stages and platforms to create awareness for that foundational service that you might offer. How, in your journey, especially when you still are speaking pretty prolifically. When you speak, if let's just say you go and do a keynote for $15,000, $20,000, but you are not allowed to monetize the audience at all. How much money are you leaving on the table when you accept those engagements versus maybe taking a $5,000 engagement where you are allowed to monetize the audience a bit?
It is very selective in that way. There are particular audiences. I have one coming up in November that is very specifically, you're not selling from the stage, right? And so I'm talking about my coaching practice. I'm talking about what I do in my other days when I'm not on the stage, but I'm not sort of soliciting that business. And that's fair. It's how I bring the message of leadership is, hey, the other day I was talking to these group of so-and-so when we were in a coaching meeting, and this is how it relates to what we're talking about in the leadership. So I don't necessarily look at it from lowering the cost or raising the cost based on that. I look at it as, okay, what are the opportunities I have within the parameters that particular stage gives me? And it's usually, okay, if you'd like to have a further conversation about what we're talking about today, here's the link or the QR code. We love to use the QR codes, and it brings them to a web page that they can fill out. So I'm not saying, hey, I want to do business with you. I'm saying, if you'd like to continue this conversation about leadership, here's the way to get a hold of me and make that happen, right? So we create a QR code with landing pages. We use different, applications to make that kind of stuff happen. So it's not a matter of changing anything other than the how I say what I say from the stage. Make sense?
I love it, and that's exactly what we're so on target with each other there. And really, I think that from the moment you get on the stage, even though you're not selling, even if you are allowed to sell, nobody wants to be sitting through a 45-minute infomercial, right?
Yeah.
That's you deliver content, but you deliver it in a way where you are letting the audience know in subtle ways that this is the first step in a journey with Mark Noon, right? It's not a one-off where you get to take some great notes. Hopefully you can go and implement it. Then I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure you can implement it if you want that. There's going to be some things that you can latch on to, whether it's a gift you're going to offer, your book, whatever it might be. But I think that message has to start early so that it's not all of a sudden you're giving all of this meat, right? All of this amazing content. And then at the end, oh, and by the way, if you want the first chapter of my book, or if you want, to get into my group, then it needs to be early on, but subtle and delivered in a way where I've got your back. I know I'm going to be giving you a lot of information.
Right.
Take the notes, be with me, but know that there's ways that you can implement this that are very doable. And I'm going to make sure that you know how to do that, however you say it and whatever you're, but I love that process. We definitely use QR codes. I think those are fabulous because everybody's got their phone in their hand, right? It makes it really quick, convenient. Don't have to think about much. Don't have to pluck in their information, all the things.
Yeah, it is. And I've had other ones that said, if you want to promote your business at the end, please feel free to do that. And I'll do that, very, I still do it in a subtle way. I don't come at them, and spend the last 5 minutes doing that. I never spend that much time. This time is about their knowledge increase. It's about their opportunity to gain something from that moment. It's not about the future opportunities for me. And I never approach it that way. I think the other part of that is how well you connect with the audience in the beginning of your message and then throughout. And so when it comes to the end, it doesn't come across in any way other than two friends talking about something. I got an audience of 100 in front of me, but yet I feel like it's one person and we're having a conversation and we've connected so well that I can offer this at the end and they're interested in it. And it's not because I'm a salesman, it's because I'm their friend, right? That's kind of that feeling. Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. And we know our friends. We know what they like to eat, when they're moody, when they're not moody, all the things. We know our friends. And so really knowing that one person is key. If you're talking to everyone kind of blanketly, you're talking to nobody. Nobody's catching what you're throwing, right?
Right.
If you're talking to your friend, there's engagement there. That means you have an understanding of them. They know that you care and you might have some good advice or some good solutions for them. And I think that is so key. What you said, Mark, you talk to that one person as a friend. Yes, it's an audience, but you're actually speaking to one person, and that one person is going to say, when do I see you again? Right. When are we getting together again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How many times have you left somebody's house for dinner and it's like you're already planning the next time that you're going to get together because you had such a good time at that one, right? So it's the same thing in a speaking engagement is how do I connect with that person on the stage again? What's that relationship, right? It's all built on that connection that we established throughout that time. Yeah.
So let's talk about that audience of 100.
Yeah.
So you've got an audience of 100. Let's say you got $15,000 to come and speak. Great payday. It's not a payday. It's $15,000 for your 40 years that led you to that 45 minutes. But that's still, a great check. How much is that audience worth to you on average? Out of 100, how many are likely to hitch their chain to your star, whatever. I'm just mixing all kinds of metaphors today. But want to go some next level with you and possibly become one of those consulting clients.
Yeah. All dependent upon the nature of the audience, right? Are they decision makers in their organization? Are they individuals who are looking for that coaching or that next level? So it's sort of dependent. If I look at an audience of 100, there may be 12 to 15 who will fill out that QR code to actually be interested. Of those 12 to 15, honest to goodness, is probably less than 5 who actually may have a conversation or continue the email chain back and forth to where they want to go. It amazes me. And this is the thing with speaking, right? Is you hear this incredible message and you get all inspired. And we had one just a few weeks ago. We had audiences where literally, I think every single person it was a very small audience I was working with. Every single person came, oh, I want to have a conversation, I want to talk to you, blah, blah, and it's all this one-on-one, we're having these conversations. I don't hear from any of them the next week, right? It's just because it's the moment. And if you don't capture that moment somehow, that's where the QR codes, I think, are really beneficial because they lock people in. They get them to a site. You get their information. You can follow up. The other ones who just say, hey, we'll talk next week. I'll email you. Yeah, that usually doesn't happen, right? So probably 12 to 15 of that, maybe 5 will actually go into the conversation. And, our closing rate at that point is usually pretty good, but at the same time, it's the level of where they are in the decision-making process. If
Right.
they're a director in an organization, they say, oh, you need to come to our organization. I say, that's great. Let me talk to your CEO, your CFO, COO, somebody who's the decision maker, and we can maybe make that happen. That usually doesn't go that far, right? Because that person doesn't necessarily, depending on the size of the organization, have that kind of influence. So then I go, okay, what can we do together? You and I, can we, formulate some kind of a coaching relationship then that we can continue this conversation about leadership, right?
Powerful.
Then, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to stop your thought. You go.
No, that's fine. That's it. That's it.
Well, okay. Let's just say it's only 2 or 3 out of a room of 100. I think it probably is more, maybe not immediately, but in time. Mm-hmm. Some people need layering, but let's just say it's 2 or 3, and you're consulting up front. Let's just say we haven't talked money, and I'm not going to ask you to give that, but let's just say it's in the ballpark of $10,000 to get started. So that's another $20,000 for that talk, but that doesn't take a 20 to 30, right? But that doesn't take into account how that builds over time. That person may work with you multiple times. They might refer you to other people. So that one room of 100 people between the keynote check and the new following, right. Can easily, very conservatively, become 50 to 75, maybe even $100,000 value. Sure.
The key as a speaker too is the consistency by which you follow up with people, the level of value that you give them over time, even if they're not in a direct coaching relationship with us as an organization, even if they're not booking me for the next speaking event. What am I sending out in my email campaigns? What kind of material am I giving them? Am I giving them a chapter of the book? Am I giving them a downloadable copy of this particular blog article or something like that? And literally, I mean, we have seen this so many times, is it may take a year and a half of just that consistent, hey, Antoniette, it's Mark again, just saying hi. I got this blog we just put out, thought you might be interested. And that's all we say. All of a sudden, a year and a half later, that person is in a position or a place to where they go, you know what, we need to do something and we need to do it now. And I've seen sort of that, we call it it's desperation, but I wouldn't go to that extreme, but it's sort of that, we got to do something. Let's figure out what that is. Let's have a conversation with Mark or one of his business partners and say, how does this start for us? How do we gain traction in this? How do we get to this next level? And so I see a lot of that too. So you can't be discouraged when you've got 100 and then maybe 15 and then maybe 5 and then 3 of them are like, yeah, maybe sometime down the road. I keep up with them all. I treat them all with value and respect. And eventually they're going to have some sort of a gap, a need, a desire for growth, for the next level. And then as long as you're sending that email consistently or having those conversations, you're top of the inbox, right? They're the ones you're going to think of.
I am so glad you brought that up because that is such an important key. So you give them the free gift of 40 to 50% of that room, if not more, depending on your gift, they're going to take you up at least on the gift, right? So they get into your ecosystem in that way. If you let it go cold, they may have loved you, but a lot has happened in 2 months and all of a sudden you email them and they hardly remember you, right? So you've got to have those systems in place where they are nurtured so that when the timing is right, just like what you said, you're top of mind, top of inbox, top of mind. It can be a combination of email, social following. Sure, there's so many different ways, podcasts, whatever it might be. But the key is they need to know that you're reliable, that you're going to be
Right.
delivering them.
Right.
And I think there's a good cadence too. Too much is off-putting, like you're
Yes.
just slamming them with things. And there needs to be more giving than there is asks, more giving than call to actions.
Right.
So give, give, give. Hey, I've got this workshop coming up. If you're interested, here's the
Right.
link. Give, give, give. Hey, I've got this new book out. You might want to, give, give,
Right.
give. Not, hey, I've got this book. Hey, I've got this thing. Hey, join my group. Hey, like you're asking them stuff all the time. That gets really wearing as well.
Sure. Sure. It is. And even when we do our email campaigns, which are an automated system that we use, it's like maybe 3 emails. Anything more than that, and they're going to unsubscribe, right? It's just one of those kind of things that you've got to know your audience. You've got to know the people. Not everybody has this desire for information all the time. Not everybody's looking for more and more. It's okay. What's the meat of it? What's the value that I'm offering them? It's not. You're right. The call to actions are great. They work. But at the same time, we can't be sending a call to action every other week on an email, because people just are going to go unsubscribe, and then you're not going to have that opportunity anymore. So what is the value you're bringing people? What is how do they see you as the sort of the spokesperson for the organization that you represent, or representing myself as a speaker? That's all key to them being able to continually follow you or continually engage with you, or a year and a half down the road go, oh, that's right, Mark Noon, let's call him and see what we can do, right?
Yes, and not forgotten. I love that. And cross-pollinating is so important. So let's say you are sending 3 emails a week. I don't like to do any more than that, probably 2 to 3 emails a week. But in that one ask that you do that week, it would be something like, hey, I do lives every Mondays and Wednesdays on LinkedIn. You might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Here's the link to connect with me on LinkedIn. Right? Tiny ask, big give, tiny ask.
Yeah.
So that when I have the bigger ask, it's not like I've been inundating them with that. And I would say can choose your platforms, right? Don't be it's just like the same saying, if you're talking to everybody, you're not talking to anybody. Where are your people gathering like grapes, right? Where are your people? Go there. My people are in LinkedIn. They're on YouTube. Those are some places I focus on. I am on TikTok. I don't even own TikTok. I don't even know, but I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I don't hang out there myself. It's just I'm already making this content, so my team puts it over there. But I do hang out and interact in LinkedIn and on YouTube, because those are places where people are going to go looking for the information that I give. It's going to be different for each person. So when I do that, I lead people, whether I'm in LinkedIn or YouTube, I'll lead them to my email list. If it's in my email list, I'll make sure that they understand that there's other goodies that I have in this podcast or in those other platforms. And it never feels like you're just slamming them too much, because people are inundated. So I love your rhythm. Yeah.
It is about the moderation, right? My wife always says this to me: less is more, right? I have you can't see it, but on the other side of the screen right here is my bookshelf. It's got all my military memorabilia and a few other things. And if it were up to me, there would be a lot more on that shelf. But I said, here's the things I have to have on the shelf. Will you put those on there? She arranges it. Less is more, she said. Bits and pieces. It looks good. It doesn't look overwhelming. Same with the yard. There's only so many things in the yard outside. It's the same thing with people, right? The less you offer, but the more valuable that offer is, the more likely people are going to stay with you and continue to watch, listen to, read your content.
Excellent point. Okay, this is a really good point that you make, because there are people who like to sift through the junk to get to the gems. We don't want to force people to do that. You've seen cluttered houses. You've seen, I don't know, we have this place not far from us called Trades Days, and it's hundreds of acres of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And some people love to sift through the stuff to find their one little gem. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I just want to go get my gem. And that's what I'm there for. Don't make them work for that, especially if you just have 45 minutes for them to begin with.
Sure.
Give them the gems, let them take away those quick wins, right? Those tangible transformations. And then they'll want that next level with you.
Right. It's the same thing, when you're on the stage and you're speaking. I've just learned this over the years. I'm not trying to hide what I have to offer till the end of the message, or it's almost like, here's what you're going to get. 1, 2, and 3. These are the 3 things that we're going to talk about today. Blah blah blah, and then I go into them in depth, but I give them sort of up front, so I catch them. They go, oh, those are the 3 things that I need to do as a leader. I need to do in my organization. Oh, let's hear more about that, rather than, hey, we're going to talk about 3 things that are going to make your leadership better. And then for 15 minutes, I ramble on about other stuff, and they're waiting for those 3 things, right? So less is more, giving things up front, helping people know what it is they're looking for. And if 2 of the 3 are what they're looking for, they're going to listen for those 2, right? But if I don't tell them what they are, they're tuned out. They're not interested in it, right? Yeah.
Another great point, Mark. Bringing up all kinds of good things. I've heard this rhythm, and everybody makes it their own. But tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them.
Right.
Because we can only consume so much. If you're trying to give them your whole basket full of knowledge, they're going to walk away with nothing.
Right.
Yes.
Right. It's why and I tell people this all the time, when I first walk on the stage, you are never going to hear me say, hey, thank you, Antoniette, for having me here. It's such a privilege, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go on for 5 minutes about our relationship and how we got here. And I'm going to jump right into some meat, because I want people to get value as soon as I walk out on the stage. Now, do I do some introduction of myself? I do, about 10 minutes into the talk.
Perfect.
Hey, here's a little bit about Mark Noon. Because people are hooked at that point. They're interested. They saw that trinket on the shelf, and they're interested in what else is in the shop, right? They saw what they want, but they're also now looking at some of these other things. And so all of those things, I think, are important to connect and to grab your audience's attention, to grab your potential clients' attention. Yeah.
Yes. Why do they want to hear your resume until they even know if you're the person they want to listen to?
Correct. And I see it happen all the time, and I just want to go, I've tuned you out already, right? And so I tell people all the time, do not do that. Connect immediately. Get the hook. Give them something of value. What is it they're going to gain today?
Yeah, and then give them something to hope for. Like they know they're going to get some more meat, so they'll endure the little bit. By then, they're interested enough to want to know, why are you an authority to tell me these things?
Right.
So you sprinkle that in, but then they're also really looking forward to what's coming. Okay, I love that. So right now, you're speaking approximately twice a month. You're going to be bumping that up to 4 times in a month pretty soon.
I would hope to, yes.
You will.
That's the plan.
How is this all word of mouth? How are you getting those engagements on a consistent basis?
So a couple things, word of mouth, absolutely. It's interesting to me when people just Google my name and that's how they found me. I'm like, because I don't have a big SEO from the website, and I don't have a lot of marketing things that I do. So when they Google, and they, like one of them Googled recently, said military speaker, my name came up. I'm like, okay, I'm a military guy who speaks, right? Or I speak to military people, and I do. But I also have a speaker agency that I use. That's been very helpful. I'm exclusive with a particular agency. So I am sort of the person they're putting into every opportunity. They might put me in with 3 or 4 other people. They might choose me. They might choose somebody else. It's word of mouth. It certainly is a referral of a lot of my coaching clients, or people have heard me speak in the past. And they'll, like I would speak at this, I mentioned this Government Finance Association meeting, there's hundreds of people there. Okay, they're going to go, well, we have our local chapter over here and we need a speaker. And the difficulty with those sometimes is that the budgets of those smaller organizations are not the same as the budgets of the bigger ones. So that's where it gets a little, for me, it's not about how much it is to have me come in and speak. It's really about the event and what the impact and the opportunity is. And I say that everything's negotiable, not that I don't have a bottom line fee. I don't have a set fee, but if somebody's, got this opportunity to create impact, and I'm the right fit for that, I'm going to say, okay, let's see what we can do for that, right? It's not about the amount of money that this other organization spend. It's about what is the opportunity with that organization. I mean, if I did, if I had an unlimited wealth, I would do this for free every single day because I love what I do. I mean, literally, I would be on the road out there speaking all over the place. If I could for free, I would do it for everybody. But that's where you have to be, I think, as a speaker, to have that kind of passion that you're willing to do it for free, and then you get paid for it as well.
I love that flexible spirit. I love to represent that flexible spirit, right? Because that one engagement, your next best engagement generally comes from your last best engagement, right? So maybe it just paid $7,500 instead of $10,000, or maybe it paid $10,000 instead of $15,000. But within that audience, if it's your right fit audience, like we said, there's a whole lot more that's there. It may not be that you get clients from that audience for whatever reason, but you might get that next engagement that leads to another fabulous engagement. There's just so much there. And when you're not a diva and you're open like that, I think that organizers are much faster to recommend you. Number one, if you're difficult, you could be the greatest speaker in the world, but if you're difficult to work with and super rigid, most organizers are just going to go somewhere where that's easier.
And my speaker agency tells me some of the ones that they've worked with over the years who are like that, who have been very difficult. One of them didn't want to walk a half mile from the hotel to the event site and insisted on having a car, which was going to cost them like $150, something like that. And I'm going, hey, I will walk there. I will drive, I'll drive my own, I'll get an Uber, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Right. So it's things like that I think are important. I think other thing as a speaker is sometimes I'm willing to do a lot of things because of the event or the location or places I've never been. I got invited to be in Dubai a year and a half ago, early 23. I'm like, of course I'm going to get paid for it to go there because it's literally 3 days. It takes me a day to get there. I do the event. It takes me a day to get back. So I'm really being paid for 3 days. But did I care how much the event was going to be? No. I have the opportunity to go to Dubai. Who would not take that opportunity, even if it was for free? You're going to pay my trip there. I'm coming. I'll spend the time with you, right? So I think that's an important thing for a speaker is sometimes there's just incredible places you get to go.
Well, and that's an incredible attitude because there is a lot of opportunity in Dubai. So you go and speak there, maybe not for the rate that you would have liked, but in being there, you meet other people. And we always try to do some fielding or a little scouting, especially if you're going to be traveling internationally. What other opportunities are there, even if it might be a free engagement on the back of this other engagement? Because you just don't know what that can turn into. One right person in an audience, and that can really revolutionize your speaking career. Yeah. Well, I love it. So you have a blend of things. And I think that that's really important for most speakers. I would say 99.9% of the speakers to implement. And I don't even know what the other 1% is, because really it's really important to not just rely on one agency or rely on maybe your podcast or rely on one way of getting those speaking engagements. It's a blend of multiple things that's going to keep you getting those consistent. You'll get engagements here or there, but if you're setting your sights on 2 per month or 4 per month, to have that like clockwork, it does take, there's a rhythm to it and it's multifaceted.
Yes, exactly.
I know that by this point, there are plenty of people in our audience that are going to want to know, how do they find your book? How do they find you? Where do they hear you? All the good things.
Yeah. So the book is called Set Up: Timeless Leadership Skills for Your Success. It's on Amazon. Best thing to do is type in the word Set Up and Mark Noon, and that book will pop up. You type up in just Set Up, you'll get a plethora of videos and books and all kinds of different things because it just doesn't capture the entire bit of the book. But Set Up, Mark Noon, you'll find it on Amazon. The way to get a hold of me directly, my email, Mark, M-A-R-K, at leadership10.org. So it's leadership, the word leadership, TEN10.org. That is our organization, Mark at leadership10.org. You can get a hold of me anytime. Please email directly. I absolutely answer every email within 24 hours, guaranteed. Even if it's just, hey, I got your email, I'll have to get back to you. I'll at least acknowledge that I got it. So if you didn't hear back from me in 24 hours, that email did not get through. So email me again. That's what I would tell you.
Wow, that's pretty fabulous, because I know you're sought after. You've got a lot of people to talk to. So promising 24 hours. That's
it's one of those things I learned a long time ago. In fact, if you Google this, Gallup did a study about 10 years ago on the top qualities of leaders. And one of those qualities was leaders who get back to their people on every voicemail and every email within 48 hours. I go to 24 just because I'm a little more excessive than others maybe, but that's my guarantee, 24 hours. Unless, I'm in Dubai or something, I'm going to get back to you. So, but.
Oh, I love that Gallup poll. We'll probably quote that from you.
Yeah, it's one of my, I talk about it often. It's literally, they did a survey of 35,000 people. What are the top qualities of the leader that you have? And they narrowed it down to 4 things. And one of those things was getting back to people within 24 to 48 hours. And so I have held true to that rule actually before that, but certainly solidified it at that time.
Ah, very cool. Okay, so we make, you don't know this, but we make speak sheets for each episode that guests can, that listeners can download. And it's some sort of wisdom that the guest brought. And I'm going to add that to your name, to yours, for people to be able to just download and be able to hold on to.
Good.
I'd like to talk about your book really quickly.
Okay.
So it released in 2018.
Yeah.
We all know what happened at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Would you have written Set Up Timeless Leadership Skills for Your Success differently if you would have written it in, let's say, 2021 after?
No, honestly, I would not have written it any differently because it's the foundational thing of leadership. It's the whole idea of Set Up is, as I said, Friday I'm this guy and Tuesday I'm this guy. And what was my training to be a leader? And so what I've focused on since that time, and that was 2000. So in that 18 years till the book was published, and now 24 years later, it is about setting people up to step in. So if you think about, in fact, that was the original title of the book, was Set Up to Step In. The publisher went, that's too many words. People, they'll get it confused, and they do. They always call it Step Up to Step In, that kind of thing. But it's this idea that if you think about, you've heard people say this, and it's a compliment. You heard people say this. It's a compliment that so-and-so stepped up. Antoniette stepped up today, which meant you did a really good job in a tough situation, right? And that's a great compliment. But what if you were so well prepared that when the opportunity came about, you simply stepped into the role and not have to step up to it? So you were set up to step in. And that's the whole premise of the book. What if I had been set up to step into that role of a leader and didn't have to struggle for the first year or two trying to figure things out? Not that you have all the answers when you get to a new level, a new position. New CEO at a company, they've worked their way up to this level. That doesn't mean they know everything, but what if they've been set up by being prepared? So that's what the book's all about. So what happened in 2020 really has no bearing on that. I would write it exactly the same way. I might use some more examples of the virtual aspect of that because a lot of the coaching from leader to staff member was done virtually. But otherwise, the foundation of it is still the same. What are we doing to prepare people to be in the next level role? So.
Such an important message always, but right now where leadership is a little sparse, especially for corporations, right? They used to be able to go out and scout and steal from each other, their leaders, and now the talent pool has really shrunk. So important book, important work, as relevant, if not more so now in 2024 as we're airing this, as it was in 2018. So love it. Okay, as we wrap, we have our signature question that, Mark, I know you're very familiar with. This is Speak Pact, and we are on a pact, you and me, to make the greatest impact that we can with our voice and bring all of our audience along with us, right? So what is one tactical, practical thing that you could say if our listeners, if the Speak Pact listeners would implement this one easy, tangible thing that they are going to be that much further this time next month?
As far as their speaking business or as far as being on the stage? Let me clarify that.
Yeah. So I was thinking in life, but we can make it a little more granular and maybe, let's say, getting the number of speaking engagements that they want. Yeah. So,
I think it's this. We hear this all the time as speakers. You got to know your audience, right? But knowing your audience is yes, I need to know that the audience is a bunch of finance people, or the audience is a bunch of industrial crane operators. The audience is a bunch of CEOs, right? I need to know that. But here's the thing about knowing people and knowing how to connect with people is about what motivates people. And literally, you can go to things like the DISC and motivators as a behavioral assessment. You can go to things like the Working Genius with Patrick Lencioni. There are basically 6 elements that motivate everybody. And I think understanding that is going to help you connect to the audience that you're speaking to the promoters of the events that you're trying to get the speaking engagement with. What's the most important thing to them? And if you can, in a short 4 or 5 minute message, get across all of those 6 motivators and connect to somebody in that, I think you're going to have the best opportunity to gain the advantage in being able to impact the audience, but also being able to gain the advantage in that promoter, that event promoter saying, yes, this is the person I want to be at our event, right? Because one, you've connected with them in a way, they're going to go, oh, he or she's going to take that same thing and connect with the audience so much more effectively.
This is what I'm hearing. I want to make sure I'm catching it, because this is really good. So instead of pitching you, how fabulous you are, right? All your accolades, everything you bring to the table, pitch to what motivates that particular audience, what they're likely looking for, which takes a little bit of homework. But if you pitch to what motivates them, what they're interested in, what they really want to take away from spending their non-renewable resource time, right? If you're speaking to what's motivating them to be there to listen, then half the job is done. Did I paraphrase that correctly?
You did. It's really this. There's 6 different things that motivate people generically across the world, and you Antoniette have 2 or 3 of those. I have 2 or 3 of those, but I'm going to hit all 6 of those in our conversation, whether it be that getting ready to promote the event, or in the audience itself. I'm going to hit all 6 of those areas so that at some point somebody is inspired or motivated by the message in that part of what I'm saying. Therefore, they're connected to it. They're going to listen to the rest of the message. They're going to get value out of it. That's the thing that is it's not easy to do. It takes time. You have to understand what those motivators are, and then how do you put those into that presentation? We did this with the United Way in our local area. I live in the Panhandle of Florida, the local area. And I said, when you go to do a fundraising campaign, here's the 6 things that you need to touch on. And all 6 of those things are going to capture somebody in the audience who then could be an eventual donor for your organization, right? It's that kind of a connection.
Okay, let's take that to the bank. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, you've been a joy, Mark. So much wealth of knowledge. Mark Noon. Look up his website. Look up his book. There's so much more that you have to give, and I so appreciate you spending your time with us today.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much.
It's been lots of fun. Good. And to our SpeakPack guests, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPack podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply #SpeakPact.